So my name is Paige Bechtel, and we're back with another episode of A Student's Perspective, and we're rolling this quarantine style from our homes. And today I'm here interviewing A&D Design Director of Mohawk Industries, Royce Epstein. So would you love to just introduce yourself a little quickly and tell us about what that role means to you?
Sure. So hi, everybody. My name is Royce Epstein. I am the A&D Design Director. I actually work for Mohawk Group, which is part of Mohawk Industries. Mohawk Group is the commercial products division of Mohawk, which is a larger company that has flooring for residential, for example, and lots of other building materials. And I focus with our product design and development team on really developing wonderful flooring products for the architecture and design community. So that's what A&D stands for. It stands for architecture and design. And I am the design director at Mohawk. We have several others, but we all have a different focus. My focus is the A&D community. So I am, always say I'm a recovering interior designer. I was a commercial interior designer practicing in large design firms for, 21 years before I went into product development. So I started working on textile design, and then now I've been at Mohawk. I just had my 5-year anniversary.
Oh, congratulations. Yeah, it's funny. A lot of these interviews, I've grown to learn that we always talk about a pretty non-linear path in terms of career choices and just where it leads you to, especially to find a lot of the niches within these industries. And I think your role is so unique in itself, the fact that it's part of a niche interior design opportunity, but you're still able to offer like such a broad range and still practice your interior design skills at a daily basis. So I was thinking about that pivot moment. I know you came from a lot of different directions. So where did you really start out in this industry?
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned nonlinear. That's pretty much how I describe myself. Like, I'm sort of like, it's funny. I just finished watching Outlander, the TV series. And Claire, the main character, considers herself like, that's why it's called Outlander, because she's the outsider, because she winds up in the Scottish Highlands, in the 1700s. And I sort of feel that way. I didn't study interior design. I wasn't planning on ever being an interior designer, or even, I didn't really even know about this side of the business. I studied art history, and I grew up in New Jersey, and was thinking about becoming an academic, and I wanted to become a professor, and I was so sort of obsessed with art and design. While we think about design, when we learn about art and we study the principles of art, it's not really shaped in that way, at least when I was going to school. I hadn't really heard the words design until I got my first design job, which I'll talk about in a second. But so I went to Sarah Lawrence, which is a very small private liberal arts school. And I was able to, because of their curriculum, really dive into art history. And I also studied Italian, which was very useful at the time. And I think it still is. I can order food in an Italian restaurant really well. But having that experience of studying art history, and at least at the time thinking I was going to go into academia, was really hopeful. And, thinking that maybe you could make a career like doing something about writing and just thinking about art was very exciting to me. However, when I graduated in 1991, it was recession, much like, we're sort of facing today. And there are not a lot of jobs out there for people who graduate with a art history degree, and it's like, what do you do with that? And in the art history world, especially with museums, you have to go to grad school, and so that was the next thing in line. And I did. I actually went to Emory in Atlanta for one semester, and then I decided that I didn't want to do this anymore. That I don't know. I just, you can call it nervous breakdown, you can call it whatever you want. I just was like, that's it. I don't even know what I want to do. And I became sort of lost, if you will. And I went back home to New Jersey. I worked in an art gallery for a year, making basically no money. And at that point, I was 23 years old, and my parents were like, you need to get out of the house and get a real job. And so, that was sort of like my awakening moment. Okay, like, and my parents, to their credit, like I was always dependent on them, I think, emotionally. And I think, many people are dependent on their parents. But for me, that was sort of like one of the first times in life I realized, like, I need to stand on my own 2 feet and like become something. But I didn't know what that was, right? And I think, I think a lot of college students can can relate to that. And, you know, so yeah, we all go through that. And so, to my mom's credit, I really owe my whole career to my mom because, well, first of all, my mom is also an artist, and not by training or by vocation, but just by hobby and whatnot. And she's very talented and was always, you know, creating when I was growing up. So I was always surrounded by making, whether it's crafts like knitting and crocheting, which my mom is amazing at that, or painting. She did these beautiful watercolors all the time. So I was somewhat exposed to that even as a kid, and, you know, growing up and obviously having a more formal art education. Like I went to RISD for a semester to do more studio art, and I also studied photography. I forgot to mention that.
Wow.
And back in the day, this was of course before the digital age, so it was all analog. You know, learning how to actually use our eye and crop and use the camera as a tool, and all of that. So all of these things, while, you know, like I never thought about them until recently as being important, they all shape, you know, who I am. And I think this, all of us can say that, you know, when we start to look back at our lives, like what are the things that shape your interests and that shape, you know, the path that you take. So while it wasn't conscious, like these things were sort of in the back of my brain, I guess. Anyway, to my mom's credit, she was reading the local town newspaper in Princeton. It's called the Town Topics. I don't even know if they still publish it. I hope they do. But I mean, it was a very small little newspaper that, you know, had listings in the back, you know, like of the news of the day, because again, the internet was not around. And my mom found this job for an admin assistant at Michael Graves. And I'm sure many of your viewers know Michael Graves now is a very famous architect who will go down in history as being, you know, sort of one of the most creative and interesting architects that we've had, especially for his multiple positions on design and humanity. Anyway, I applied for the job, and the whole reason I got the job was because I was really into music, and I still am. I'm in a band. I'm a musician. I approach music and design and art like I do, you know, with the art historical training that I have received, which is, you know, I think about everything in context. I like to collect and absorb and really understand what it is that I enjoy. So I do that with music as well. And the admin assistant that was needed was for the sort of head architect right under Michael. And he was a big music fan. And his entire studio was lined with CDs. And of course, MP3s did not exist at the time. And anyway, so there were shelves and shelves of CDs. And when I went for my interview, I'm like looking at his CDs. I'm like, I have that, I have that, I have that. And they're like, you're hired, you know, because they really needed somebody who could like tolerate this, you know, like situation of like listening to music all day, and music is all like, you know, sort of punk and post-punk alternative at the time. And I'm like, sign me up, you know. And thank goodness I had very good writing skills from Sarah Lawrence. Sarah Lawrence is a school that no matter what you study, whether it's dance or painting or art history, like, you know, you focus a lot on writing and self-expression. And that's the one thing I really learned at Sarah Lawrence, and I'm very grateful for that. Because before that, you know, I went to a great high school, but I didn't feel like I had a voice in high school. And I think a lot of young women complain about that. You know, it's like the boys always get picked first when you raise your hand in class and that sort of thing. And you know, I think I did well and I had good grades, but I just was sort of like under the radar, and I don't think I ever found my voice in high school. And it wasn't until probably I started working at Michael Graves that I realized like I actually have some design skills, I have art skills, I have writing skills, and these are kind of unique. Like, you know, most artists don't study writing and most writers don't study art. And so for me, it was sort of like this awesome combination. Like I was quite, you know, exposed to all these different things. And a lot of that has to do with just my own natural curiosity about, you know, again, this is like the historian of me, like really wanting to understand the why about things. And so I always dig deep on stuff, and you know, if I like something, I'm going to learn about it, collect all the things I can about it. And so I find that has been really helpful. And so anyways, at Michael Graves, I was there for 3 years, and, you know, very junior position. I did everything from like picking up pizza for the office and cleaning up, you know, after Michael's class with students, and because he also taught, he was a professor at the university. For me, that was my grad school. That was my design education. And while it wasn't formal, I will tell you that I snuck into many a class at Princeton University. I got to see all the great architects of the 90s come through with their lectures. And Michael was very, very generous. Like he would literally sit with me and explain, like, this is why we do this and this is why we don't do this. And working with everyone in that studio, I mean, those 3 years are really precious for me. I'm getting emotional thinking about it. Because they gave me a lot. And the thing is, they believed in me, and I don't know why. You know, I just showed up for work every day, and I, you know, for whatever reason, it clicked. Everything clicked, you know. And then, you know, it got to a point where, you know, I didn't want to be the office girl for the rest of my life, and I wanted to take it to the next level. And it just so happens that Hillier, which is a very large commercial architecture firm, and also in Princeton, was looking for a resource librarian. And for those of you out there who don't know what that is the person in a design firm who manages all of the firm's materials in a library. And so it's sort of like a library with books, but instead of books, it's all the materials. So fabrics and all the, at the time we had binders because, you know, again, the internet didn't exist. So all the furniture companies had catalogs and binders. And so I worked at Hillier in Princeton and also in Philadelphia for a 10-year span. It wasn't all consecutive. But I learned a lot because I learned the commercial part of the interior industry. What?
You became an extreme expert on everything.
Yeah, but I mean, it took a long time. Like it didn't happen overnight.
Right.
You know, like I think people forget. Like I there are a lot of people I've known in the industry. I've been in the industry now 28 years, and you know, hopefully I still look young. But there are a lot of people I've known that long who still look at me like I'm 23. You know. Like they haven't seen me progress or change, and it's weird because I have to remind people like, hey, we've known each other 20 years or 25 years, you know, and they're like, oh yeah, you know. But that's a whole other thing. But I do think that you know, working at Hillier really shaped my perspective because it allowed me to learn about commercial interiors. Like Michael did commercial interiors, but he also did residential, he did hospitality, and they didn't define it that way. Like it was more about Michael's work and the language of design that he was creating. And that's a very different experience than working for like a commercial design firm, which is much more about deadlines and multiple projects. And so I learned more of like the business side, I guess you could say, of architecture and interior design. And because I was there for so long, I was able to develop my own skills about materials. So that's learning about materials, learning their applications, where do you use them. And while a lot of interior designers have to learn that as part of their job, I had the luxury of doing that full time. So I wasn't drawing, I wasn't, you know, I didn't know AutoCAD. I wasn't like, you know, redlining plans or anything like that. Drafting, I spent all of my time focused on materials and then furniture as well, learning about furniture systems. And then I, you know, slowly started to take on more and more, learning how to write furniture specifications and then really learning about how to do a whole spec package and then, you know, on and on and on until, you know, and then, you know, 20 years later, like there I am, like with all of this knowledge. So yeah, nobody really showed me the way. There was no real clear path. You know, I guess you could say,
few minutes, you already curated a lot of design philosophies that you feel strongly about, and you know, I love that process has brought you to where you are. And even just talking about your curiosities as a person, it's led you to be the designer that you are today. And I was considering some of the things you talked about in high school too, and like the opportunities that aren't always there, we're not aware of yet. I think like all those backgrounds are so important to us, whether it be in art and history, and even the side notes like photography and that. I like can relate to that in some aspects of art where I never knew how I wanted to apply them into a career because I didn't necessarily knew what my future path was. And I feel like design has offered that encompassing nature for all of us. But then at a further level, it's allowed us to relate to the human scale and just actually understanding the people around us and more of an anthropological aspect.
Yes, very much so. And I agree with you 100%. I think again, like, and this is going back, you know, 20 years, but, you know, there was for a lot of people a prescriptive path. Like you had to go to design school to be a designer. I spent my whole career defending that. I've had many people try to knock me down to say, you're not a designer, or why does she get to work on that project? She didn't go to design school. I'm like, well, I still went to school. I still have a brain. I still have good critical thinking. Like that doesn't make me less of a person. You know, I have gone through all of those emotions that and experiences, and people have really tried to knock me down. And it's okay. Like, I've learned to find my place and my voice. I think, again, finding your voice is really important. Like, it's okay to have it, to be the outlander and have a different path. And, you know, today we embrace that more and more. Interior design as a profession has become so much more about multiple disciplines. You know, you can't build a building just with architects or just with interior designers. You need acousticians and lighting experts. And now, you know, we need all kinds of experts with all sorts of other things, sustainability and, you know, even like designing for inclusion and designing for emotion. Like, all these things are starting to come into our practice, that we need experts. And it takes a village to raise a family. It takes a village to design a building. It's the same. And I think the more we recognize that as people and as an industry, we need to embrace the other to have sort of a greater expanse of what something could become, I think is really important. And so I will always fight for that and advocate for that. And, you know, I'm sure, you know, as a student who went to design school, I don't know how you feel about this, but I'm perfectly fine working next to someone who didn't go to school.
Oh, absolutely.
I think that's okay. I mean, everybody comes to the world from a different experience, and there's room for everybody's experience. And you know, I think we're learning that now just from watching what's playing out in front of us with, you know, the riots right now. And I don't want to call them riots, the protests, because that's a better place. You know, we want to be protesting for everybody's voice, right? And so, you know, that's really important.
Yeah, I know. I was considering that myself, thinking about where I work, just within a design firm. I'm an intern at a design firm, and it's a smaller firm in itself. But even just think about where you find your place in the professional industry. Like, you don't want to offer yourself to a firm if you don't feel that it's the fit for you. But I realized just by working with a variety of people and just the different types of people you meet, we may all have probably a similar degree, whether it be in interior design or interior architecture or maybe some not at all, and just say drafting degrees and things like that. But everyone offers a significant piece to the bigger picture, and there's definitely a handful of people who can answer certain questions, and then a handful who always can, just depending on the topic of variety. And it doesn't matter your age or who you are, but there's scenarios where they feel comfortable coming to me just because of my recent experience in school or recent topics. And it's nice feeling that importance and just like the different specificities that come from having a background that's extremely different.
Yeah. And that's true. And I think it's about acknowledging that everybody has a place at the table. You know, again, and I think I'm glad you mentioned age, because, you know, that's important too. Like, I was very lucky. I was very young when, you know, Michael took me into his studio and saw me as someone who was curious and was like, I'm going to invest my time in her, you know, and I really appreciated that. The same thing at Hillier, you know, like, I had wonderful opportunities at Hillier, and the Hilliers, they're actually real people, Bob and Barbara Hillier. The same thing, they gave me opportunity because they saw that, you know, and it wasn't about age or education, or it was about sort of this, you know, I can't even put it to words, but, you know, everybody has something to offer. And I think if you're lucky enough to have a mentor or someone who can tap you and say, hey, like, I'm going to help you get to that next place, like, that's important. And so I have been very lucky to have that in my life, and I always pay it forward. I mean, I've always been someone to teach and to listen and to help people up along the way. And that's something I continue this day. Yeah. Which is why I'm doing this interview.
I was just going to say, it's another reason for this call, and we appreciate that so much, because we know you have a lot of, you know, a busy schedule as it is, and taking the time to talk to us, and more importantly, reach a greater audience of students and just everyday professionals who kind of need to be open to this conversation that we like to have. So we appreciate that more than you know. And it's another reason I look up to even our professors too, at the same scale that you've had mentors. Like, he's created these opportunities for us to be able to have these conversations with people. I never would have met you, I'm sure, in a million years otherwise. And it's just those kind of relationships.
We would have met in the future.
Someday.
We would have met.
If the world opens, but yeah, as well. And it's just, I don't know, it's just crazy, the opportunities that it's allowed us, even just through the virtual world as well. And just the way it has us considering our future career paths. I know it's changed a lot of perspectives for some of the students in order of what career they can get into.
Of course.
Especially when my background is just specifically in interior architecture, I think a lot of us do think we need to follow that strict path of you're going to get out of here in 4 or 5 years and you're going to become an interior designer, interior architect. But it doesn't have to be that way because we realize that the specificities that are important to us can kind of create its own path for us in the future.
Absolutely. And I think interest and what drives your curiosity and what drives, your passion is something to think about. Like if you care about sustainability, like there's a whole avenue that you can go down and become, ensconced in that world.
Mm-hmm.
There's, again, lots of people that practice interiors and architecture that don't have that really firm kind of understanding and knowledge about the sustainability initiatives that need to happen in our world, but also in our industry. So, that's just one example. I was another example of just really focusing on materials and materiality and thinking about materials in a much broader context than just like, what are we going to spec today on this project? But really thinking about like the cultural value of materials and really taking it to that next level. And so that's what I'm interested in. But other people, I have many friends in this industry that have really found a niche for themselves, becoming specialists. And, maybe that's not a good word, but really honing in on an interest that fuels their passion and allows them an avenue that is also a little different than what everybody else is doing. And I think that is a really good way to make room for yourself in an industry, any industry, especially the person who's going to discover the cure for coronavirus, like they have a good path going on for them, right?
Yeah.
So, it's like whatever your passion is and your interest, like I think if you can throw yourself into that, that's also going to set you apart from everybody else.
Yeah, no, I did want to bring up the topic of not only sustainability, but kind of material like ecology and stuff. So my practice, well, at least for my graduate program too, it's also an adaptive reuse. We have a focus in adaptive reuse. So we do have conversations of not only sustainability, but the effects on personal like ecology, and just the relationships that it builds. So I just wanted to kind of ask you, because I know, well, one, I'm jealous of your repertoire of just material expertise in general and how you've learned about just like the opportunities it's allowed you with the application and just understanding how it affects people kind of personally. So what is your kind of take on either material ecology and how you kind of play that role into your role now?
That's a very hard question to answer.
I know, I was going to back up the questions.
I have personal views on materials. I myself am a cancer survivor. So once you get cancer, it's like you start reevaluating every single thing you come in contact with your life, whether it's what are you eating or what are you washing your hair with or what am I breathing, like all of that. So there's that personal side to my life, which now I've become kind of a materials warrior. And the other thing I will say, maybe I'll just start with Mohawk. Like Mohawk is a company that is very forward thinking when it comes to materials and innovation and using innovation to help make us more sustainable. Not just us as a company, but really, it's for our customers and obviously the world. So, years ago, we started this new platform. We're part of something called the Living Product Challenge. And it was founded by Jason McLennan, who he founded the International Living Futures Institute and also the Living Building Challenge. And so it's an accreditation program for buildings, but really it's much more than that. It's really a sort of a guidebook on how to build healthy buildings. And it's not just about the building. It's about the inhabitants of the building and the community that the building, is part of. So it's got a much bigger outreach, if you will. And so we are taking that platform at Mohawk and using that on our products. And so that's why it's called the Living Product Challenge. And part of that challenge is something called hand printing.
At Mohawk Group, we believe in better, and we are so excited to be launching a group of living products across all of our categories. We're going to be launching living products in the category of carpet tile, broadloom, area rugs, and hard surface. And by doing that, we give you the opportunity to create healthier spaces, spaces that mean more to our customers at the end of the day, and add value to what it is that you're trying to create inside the marketplace. We're so excited about what we're able to do with handprints over footprints. We're able to go out and look at the things that we're going to offset: energy, water, greenhouse gas emissions. Doing the handprints over footprints for us is a next level way for us to really believe in better by thinking about the things that we're going to do in terms of impacts to our communities in a much more strategic way.
And I think that's an interesting way to look at materials. Everything we do in our life has a footprint, just like us doing this Skype call has a footprint. There's an energy footprint. There's like, I'm breathing carbon dioxide right now and breathing in oxygen just as you are. We have our own carbon footprint. Then there's the way we live and all the things we use, but everything that we use has a footprint as well. How did that thing get to your house? There was a long, trek to get to your house of being manufactured, and maybe it was shipped around the world 3 times before it got to the Target where you went to go buy it. But then there's embodied carbon in that thing. So, it's very complicated. There's a lot to it. It's not just as simple as like I go to the store and I buy something, I consume it, I recycle it, and I'm done. That's not really it. It's about human health, and health comes from many things. What we ingest, what we breathe, what we touch. And again, all of these things affect the community. And so I think, it's hard to answer just because it is so complex. And for me, it's so personal. But, I can say, I'm really proud to work at Mohawk because they're a company that is taking a position about this.
Right.
When you work in architecture and interior design, it's a little bit different. Firms themselves can have a position. I know many firms that are like, we're not going to use any products that have PVC, for example. But then they might design a hospital and then they have to use PVC products because that's the only thing that will, be germ proof and you can use bleach on and whatever. And so, there's a dichotomy there. And so I think as a society, we're not quite there yet. We're not quite at the point where everything is healthy and everything is I don't know. I'm not being articulate and I'm sorry. I just think that, we have a lot of work to do, just like we have a lot of work to do socially. We have a lot of work to do with stuff and materials and how they're made, how they're designed. More importantly, they need to be circular. They need to break down and become something else. So, we have to stop this trajectory that we're on of just using something once and throwing it out and it goes to landfill. And that's one of, again, it's a complex problem. That's another challenge of why we have climate change to the detriment of all of our health. So I think your generation is going to have to help solve this. Of course, my generation, I'm a Gen Xer for those who don't know. We obviously we were part of the problem. We want to be part of the solution. But, from what I'm seeing, your generation, Gen Z, is very vocal about not accepting the world that is being left to them. And they want to stand up and fix it. And I applaud all of you. And I wish you well in your endeavors. And I'm here to help and roll up my sleeves, as are many of my friends and colleagues. We have to do this together. And it's going to take a lot of thought and a lot of change.
Yeah, I think there's a growing conversation of just overall awareness. And like you said a little before about embodied energy, this was the first year in my education. It took until my 5th year to learn what embodied energy even was and the way that we think about materials and just their application. And it was kind of it seemed silly to me to be so mind blown at such a later stage in my, not just design education, but just my life in general, 23 years later, and I'm only now kind of understanding the application of some of the materials that we use, and to think that I was maybe theoretically designing with them in school for 5 years and not realizing the implications of some of those actions and decisions I was making, just based off of whether it was a design concept or theory, but it wasn't actually crucial to the way it was affecting the people that were going to inhabit the space, at a greater scale. And I think that's a conversation that needs to, touch past maybe just design, education in itself, and reach a broader environment. And I think as designers, we want to not only create those environments for people to feel safe in and, provide as much sustainability as possible, but share the message of why we're doing those things and what can change to be done. Because like you said, it's not just the material in itself either, the attributes of the specific material, but there's a lot of other factors that go into our footprint in general. And we're not all conscious of it, but I think we need to be having that conversation earlier.
Well, I'm glad you're learning this in school, because I will tell you, my generation did not learn about sustainability in school at all. It wasn't part of the curriculum. And even now, practicing interior designers and architects, you can choose to learn about it, or you can choose not to learn about it. It's not a mandatory thing unless you are assigned to a project that happens to be LEED or a living building. And even then, I think it's on people's personal interests. And I'll tell you, there are many end users and clients out there who are not interested in sustainability. The design firm will bring up, hey, do you want this to be a sustainable building? And they're like, I don't care. Like, does it cost me more? If it costs me more, I don't want to do it. So this is where we have a long way to go. It needs to become an imperative that everybody just believes in. Like as it needs to be sort of second nature, just like we're breathing. We want to believe we're breathing clean air. Like, it has to be that easy. I'm glad you're learning about it.
Thank you. No, I mean, it's been an exciting process to learn. And I know I still have a few more courses at that scale that I hope to learn more about, because it was one of the first courses that I think kind of touched back to what was one of the reasons that I started this career path in general, and just reaching people at another level. Because sometimes I feel like we just kind of miss that point of takeoff. And it just made a lot of things come full circle for me, I feel, in that aspect.
A way to connect these ideas is that, we were talking about career paths and maybe finding kind of your passion. Like, once you know what you're interested in, maybe finding firms and aligning yourself with people who are already practicing those things is a really good thing to do. And that will help maybe have entree into that side of the business or that side of the industry.
Definitely. I think I've had considered that more and more, and I feel like the firm that I work for also, like, we strive to be educators as well. And I think that's another step that I'd like to push, is just how we can educate not only the people that we design for, but just the people around us on a daily basis, and how they can do their part in that same world. And I also want to say, because I know you're a strong educator in itself, and just the opportunities that you have to outreach and not only write about things, but be able to share at a greater basis. You're connected on so many levels, and I appreciate that, because I think some people stick so securely to either their role and kind of don't extend their knowledge as much as they can, because you have a repertoire of knowledge to share. Do you want to talk maybe about being an educator, and just because I know you're connected not only to IIDA, but ASID, and then I believe the Museum of Art too, you still hold a role.
Yeah, I can talk about all of that. So, I actually taught interior design, materials and finishes course for 9 years at Moore College of Art here in Philadelphia. And I love Moore because it's the only all women's art school in the U.S., and there's only 2 in the world. So that's exciting. And I taught in their continuing education program, so it was at night. So I would work full time all day at architecture firm. And then I would go teach for 3 hours at night. So it was, I had no life between, those 2 jobs. I mean, I shouldn't say that. I had a design life. I didn't have a social life. But it was really, really rewarding, because the students that I had were all adults who were changing careers. Like, maybe they were a nurse, or, they were a lawyer, and they're like, I don't want to do this anymore. And I love art and I love design. And how do I get to that next level? So I was somebody who was a resource for them to help, kind of redirect their lives. And so, I was just one class for them, but at the same time, I'm still in touch with a lot of my students that I had from that time. I haven't been teaching for a number of years now, but it was really rewarding. And, if you ask my mom, she'll tell you I've been teaching since I was like an infant. I have a younger brother, and he was probably subjected to lots of things he didn't want to learn about. And I think, part of my role as being a material specialist or resource specialist, whatever you want to call it, was also educating my coworkers about those materials so they could use them on their projects and learn. So I always looked at my job as this platform to educate all of my coworkers, and not from like a teacher perspective. Like, it wasn't like I'm here and they're over here. Like, it's together as a team, like I rely on them for teaching me certain things, and they rely on I rely on them for teaching me certain things that they know and they have expertise in, but then they rely on me as well for my expertise. So, that's how I always have worked with the project teams that I've worked with. And many, many interior designers that I have worked with we've become very, very close. We've worked on many, many projects together. I have one colleague at Hillier. I think we worked on 18 projects together. That's a lot.
That's a
Like,
lot.
especially when some of these projects are 3, 4, 5 years out,
Yeah.
and you're doing multiple, large architectural and interior design projects at a time. I also worked at Kling Stubbins in Philadelphia, which when I got the job at Kling, I felt like I got into Harvard. At the time, seriously, Kling isn't around anymore. They got bought by a larger engineering company called Jacobs. But when I got the job at Hillier, I was working at Hillier and I got the job at Kling. I really felt like, wow, like I'm going now to like the big time. Like Kling in Philly was the big time, at least in the mid 2000s or early 2000s, and they were winning every project. They had the best design director, who still, I call him my work husband. I have other friends who I've worked at other firms with that we also all work together at Kling. So that's the nice thing too about having longevity in this industry, is that you meet like-minded people along the way, and you kind of stick together, and you stick together professionally, and you stick together personally. And so it's really nice that these people are my family. I won't name them all. They know who they are. It's really awesome. I've learned so much from them. Hopefully they've learned from me, but more importantly, it's about trust. Like, we trust each other with our knowledge level and our skill sets, and that we know when we come together to work on a project, like, we could rock it out the door. And that's a great place to be as an interior designer, to have a team of people that you trust each other, rely on each other. But I will say it does take a long time to get there. You can't expect that immediately. And I think, the one thing I do see with, certainly younger millennials and, your generation probably is going to experience this as you come into the workplace. Like, a lot of people are impatient. They want things to happen now. And, we live in a society of instant gratification. And that's because we have Netflix and we can binge watch shows, and, we have Amazon and things can get overnighted to us. But careers do not work that way. Like, they take a really, really long time. I had a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, believe me, between working at Michael Graves and leaving Kling to move to New York for, my first product development job. It wasn't an easy path. It was definitely a nonlinear path. And I had to really work at self-marketing, which I hate doing. Like, it sounds strange because I'm out there doing all these things, but, it's really weird to tell people, like, hey, I have something to say. And, like, look at me and talk to me about it. It's not comfortable. So for me, it's always been about the messaging and the content and the work. It's not about me. It's about what I need to express about those things. And again, the teaching aspect. And so that's sort of one whole piece of it. Kind of having colleagues, and then also literally teaching in a school. But then now that I work at Mohawk, like, my job as the A&D design director is I'm the face to the A&D community about everything that we're doing. So that's everything from a design standpoint, a sustainability standpoint, an innovation standpoint. How do we tie that all up together so that we can get people to specify our products? Ultimately, we're a company that sells carpet and flooring. So that is ultimately my job, but I don't look at it that way. I'm not a salesperson. I'm here to educate everyone about what we're doing as a company. And hopefully, and I think I'm doing a good job of this, I think my boss can attest to this, we're creating really great content to share with our audience. And our audience is interior designers and architects and end users and just the design community in general, about the importance of the things that we care about. It's not just to sell carpet. Like, we have a larger purpose. And I like to think of it that way. And so, I have been given this platform to do that. And that's my role, to be on camera and talk about, not me, talk about Mohawk. And more importantly, getting back to, you mentioned cultural issues. And, I think that my I wanted to try to tie back, like, what I'm doing now with my art history degree, because for a lot of people, and again, it took me a long time also to go from there to there. But I didn't know with my art history degree how it was ever going to serve me in this field. Other than, okay, I have good memorization skills and have good visual memory, and, I know a lot about art, but, like, how is that going to really help me? It's all coming together now. I mean, again, it took like over 2 decades for me to figure out how I'm, the things that I learned and the skill set that I was able to get in college and beyond, how is that helping me today? For me, art history is all history. It's about context. Like, we learn something, but something happens and there's a context or a reason why it's happening. There's always a reason why things are happening.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have to look at the greater picture of what's happening in culture and the economy and politics and, I mean, you name it. And so that's my perspective, and that's what I bring to Mohawk. And so when we look at, you know, promoting carpet, I'm not just talking about like the particular style or color or pattern. I'm talking about how does this product have meaning in our clients' lives based on all of those other cultural factors. So I figured out how to kind of marry like my passion for history and art and you know, all the things happening in culture, which I'm a great observer of, and I like to try to analyze what's happening and make sense of it, and then apply that to design, you know, and I think it's working.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, I mean, that's kind of my role.
I think it's so incredible that you're able to have those conversations. Just working for Mohawk in general, I feel like there's maybe something missing with other. I mean, I don't want to be specific about other brands and other necessities, but sometimes when you meet someone who's either just promoting a project or a product, and maybe this is a sales rep or someone of that sort, there's always that disconnect, and it becomes more about either the price tag that's on the product or just the visual aesthetics, and there's no story to anything that's being sold to you. And that's why we ask a lot of the important questions that need to be asked when we meet some of those representatives. To really tell us not only why are we buying this for the price point, but why are we really buying this product, and why is it going to benefit the designs that we're creating? So I just love
now
that.
We have to ask, is this product going to kill us? Like, that's what I think about.
Yeah.
I don't want to be like inhaling like chemicals that are going to give me cancer again, you know.
Absolutely.
Like, I think all of us have the right to health. And I think, you know, products play a big part of that. And it's not just for our own bodies, but for nature. Like, we belong to nature, the earth. You know, we don't own the earth. Like, we are symbiotic. We have this sort of symbiotic relationship, and it's our responsibility to also protect the planet. And so these are great questions. And again, I'm glad you guys are learning that. You know, my generation did not learn those things in school necessarily. I think we learned them on the job. You know, the sustainability movement in architecture, at least on a global scale, like we know it today, didn't really happen until the mid to late 90s. So, you know, we weren't really thinking about those questions until much later.
Right.
But it's happening, and it's good. I think there is a movement happening. You know, I look at Greta. Hopefully everybody knows who Greta is. And, you know, like I said, your generation is going to take this to the next level and hopefully solve some of the world's greatest problems. And, you know, I always say, like, and my boss actually says this too. And in fact, this is probably where I got it from. You know, she's worked at Mohawk 30 years, and she's like, I've made every kind of carpet that you can make. Like, I've seen every kind of product that you can have. If we're going to make something, we need a really good, compelling reason. You know, we're not just going to make something to make something. Like, there's no point in doing that. The world is already polluted enough, right? So if we're going to make something, we're going to make something that's not polluting. We're going to make something that's healthy, and we're going to make something that's going to change people's lives. Like, that's really powerful.
It is.
Like, I want to work for a company that does that, and thank God I do.
You do.
That's pretty amazing. And I think as interior designers and architects, like, I think you can shift that thinking. Like, when you design the built space, like, think about all those things. Like, is this space bettering people's lives? Is this space inclusive for everybody? Not just like what ADA would consider inclusive. Everybody. You know?
Right, of course.
I think these are the issues of the time.
And I love that you've fallen into Mohawk, someone who does support something of that nature and just a broader scale. Do you think, just with your role in general, especially because you've only been there a few years now, where do you see not only Mohawk moving, but your ability to be able to help Mohawk move forward and kind of grasping all these issues?
Yeah. Well, you mentioned Mohawk Industries in the beginning. That's a very, very large company. Like, they own Dow Tile. We own lots of different companies. So Mohawk Group is like one company within this bigger organization. And what's nice is that our company is quite entrepreneurial, meaning that if somebody has a great idea and it's going to help change our business for the better, like, you know, you have a voice. And I think we've done a really good job at letting lots of voices shine at our company. Mine included. You know, like I said, I just had my 5-year anniversary, and you know, I can see the change that I've made from the beginning to now. Hopefully I will be allowed to continue to make change at Mohawk. But I'm not the only voice. There's many voices. And again, it's like I was talking about earlier, there's a team and we each have our expertise and we lean on each other and support each other and try to push that forward. And I'm very lucky that Mohawk is a company that does that. You know, we have, I'm by no means a sustainability expert. We do have sustainability experts and people who are much more engaged in the sustainability community than me. And so I learned from them and we work together, you know, and there's, like I said, there's always work to do. There's always a way to be better. In fact, that's our motto. We have like a motto, you know, believe in better, you know, and, you know, it might seem silly as a marketing thing, but it's not. Like you know, we all could be better. Like every day we wake up and it's like, what can I do to be better today in my own house, in my own job, in my company, right? And so, you know, I think for students especially, like, that's a really good thing to take on as you're starting to get out in the world, to think about, like, you know, every little step you take and make, like, should be doing something of value. You know, that doesn't mean you can't take a nap or you can't, you know, go to the movies once in a while. Of course you can do those things. But, you know, like, is the time you're spending on big projects going to be something that, like, you know, chips away at making the world better or making my company better or my school better or my family better? You know, these are things that we need to all start thinking about, because for too long we haven't. So anyway, at Mohawk, it's been really nice. Like, I've been very lucky. You know, my boss is amazing. I can't say enough good things about her. Her name's Jackie Detmar. So Jackie, thank you. And really everyone at Mohawk, you know, our president, you know, the board of directors, and, you know, I have to say it's more like just the day-to-day people that I work with. Like, if you believe in better and you believe in change and you believe in making healthy products and making products that resonate with people, then we're going to do that. So a lot of it is just about setting goals and then just figuring out how to attain those goals. And again, that takes discipline. Like, that's not something that you can just do overnight. You have to have patience. Yeah. You know, one of the things I learned as a cancer survivor is definitely patience. I was not a patient person before I got cancer. And having cancer is very frustrating because you don't have answers right away. It takes a long time to know things. You know, even to get better, it takes a long time, and you still worry, is it going to come back? So all these things are, like, have taught me patience in the grand scheme of things. And that's a really good lesson for everything in life. Yeah. Like the coronavirus, we're all sitting here waiting, like, when is life going to come back to normal? It's not going to be normal. It's going to change. And we have to have patience and go with the change. And this is what history has shown us. You know, change can be good. It doesn't have to be a bad thing.
Well, I congratulate your gratitude in not only just every aspect of your life, really, and all the accomplishments that you've made. And I guess I can end off, too, with we'd love to find you on social medias, whether it be your company or yourself, because I know you're just already reaching a greater community. So if you could give everyone your social medias, that would be
great. So Mohawk is Mohawk Group. I don't know if there's a underscore under there. It's either Mohawk Group altogether. I can't believe I don't know it. It's like phone numbers. Like, nobody knows anybody's phone number. But Mohawk Group is our company. You'll find us. We're all over social media. We're on Pinterest. We're on LinkedIn. We're on Facebook. Of course, we're on Instagram. And then I personally am Madame Duchamp. So Madame, like the French word for Mrs. And then the underscore, there's an underscore, and then Duchamp. And so basically I'm calling myself Mrs. Duchamp, as in Marcel Duchamp, the famous artist. And here in Philadelphia, you had asked me about the Philadelphia Art Museum. I forgot to answer that. I'm on a board at the Philadelphia Art Museum called CoLab, and we help the museum procure contemporary and modern design for its permanent collection. So, you know, I don't know if your viewers have been to the Philadelphia Museum of Art, but it's quite an encyclopedic museum. You know, we have lots of examples of civilization from, like, the beginning of man all the way up through today. But our group, CoLab, focuses on design, collecting design at the museum and promoting that. And so I've been involved with CoLab for quite a while now. And it's wonderful to be able to you know, teach the city of Philadelphia and our greater community about design, you know, from a different platform.
It's just another great community to follow as well. So I hope everyone does.
Yeah, but you can follow. CoLab actually has a great Instagram too. Follow us on Instagram. You can follow the Philadelphia Museum of Art, of course. Yeah, but I wanted to mention at the museum, they have an amazing Marcel Duchamp collection. So that's where I got this name. Famous is Joan. And I DJ, so that's my DJ name as well.
I know there's so many points to reach on because
Yeah, I have a band. You guys should follow my band. Needs the most Instagram followers.
Please, I actually would love to myself.
Yeah, my band's called Helvetica Black.
Okay. Okay.
You could find us as well.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much for your time. And this is an incredible interview. I mean, I hope it reaches a lot of people for this reason because there's a lot to be heard.
Well, I hope everybody stays safe and healthy, and I hope everyone has an amazing summer. And I'll see you out there in the world soon.
Thank you. All right.
Thank you.
Thanks for another episode of A Student's Perspective.